So, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over tips and tricks that I've gone through my second year that help me build muscle over time. So I'm going to start off with discovering cables. Usually, as a beginner, you're going to look at compound movements. You won't really look into isolation, or people won't really go towards the cables that much. You know, they won't be curious enough for it. But cables brought a whole new level of muscle gain to the table. Using cables, it allows you to have a better tension over time. When you isolate a muscle, you can have tension on it for longer periods of time instead of just having like a multitude of forces working on a muscle. Well, you have a force that's acting on a muscle, but you're controlling it with that cable. So the tension is being driven and you can contract with it. The great thing about cables is that it allows you to use supination, pronation, and neutral grip. So you can work different kinds of muscles with different exercises using those three different grips. Using the cables, you can have a better tension over time using those three separate groups of grips, which is great because you can hit your muscle with those different grips with a better tension over time. So that's what makes cables a great asset. It really dives into getting a specific angle that you want to look for in order to sculpt the muscle more when it comes to isometrics. So the second point I want to go over is discovering different grips. Oh, I already mentioned that. Well, I already mentioned the 2 points, The next one was going to be discovering different grips, but I already talked about the grips. So the third point I want to go into is discovering more supplements. Going over my second year, I discovered supplementation. I was looking at vitamins, I was looking at minerals, I was looking at things that can enhance the outcome of the gym, greater recovery, or which foods can I dive into that will get me a higher level of testosterone. Supplements that can potentially increase my test, but also potentially increase my overall health. I was diving into every single possible thing in order to find things that can get me as much muscle and as quick as possible as well. So when I discovered more supplements, I was diving into mass gainers, basically whey protein. I was diving into BCAAs. I was diving into EAAs. I was diving into vitamins, vitamins with minerals in it. All these things. And just to optimize health as much as possible. But I started scratching off the bad ones. I started figuring out which ones are pretty bad and which ones are pretty good. And mind you, these are all mostly I was looking for natural supplements, but I did try, processed supplements. Like the processed supplements would be mass gainers. It'd be, whey protein. Whey protein is a highly processed thing as well. These things do help. Whey protein does help, but it's not going to be good on your digestive system. Most people can't digest whey protein that well. It can upset the stomach, as well as mass gainers. That is going to give you the shits. You're going to go to the washroom with that one, unless it's a grass-fed one. So what I've discovered is that anything grass-fed or anything that was like a more natural in its state, as in protein, would be better. I would just digest it better. I wouldn't have gas. I wouldn't have bloating issues. Because I remember taking whey protein, I'd be bloated towards my stomach area or towards my intestines. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun going to the washroom either. looked like a war field, like you stepped on a mine and it just went, not too good. So when it comes to supplements, like it just purely based it down to iso whey protein, which is another type of protein, which is just protein itself. It's not protein mixed with carbs or mixed with other stuff. It's still processed, but it's less processed than whey protein. If you take iso whey, isolated protein, that's going to be better in your stomach. I tried mass gainers, grass-fed from New Zealand, and they were pretty good. They didn't give me any bloating, they didn't give me any side effects, so that was good too. When it comes to my second year, I was looking into as much things as possible, like YouTube, books, just anything that can just optimize more muscle gain, over time. And scratching all that off, you just want to stick to the most natural thing possible, Most of your vitamins and minerals are going to come from food, but you can use, vitamins. Sometimes you're not getting it enough from food, depending on how nutritious the food was. Honestly, like just going for, you know, natural foods and foods that aren't GMO processed, or foods that aren't processed basically on the shelves, I would just go for the most natural food there is. You know, I'd just go for, like, you know, fruits, vegetables, meats. When it came to like carbohydrates, I'd have rice, I'd have like sweet potatoes, basically basic food, you know, nothing like processed or nothing heavily processed. It could be our cooking oils too. Like cooking oils are so bad. Like vegetable oil, canola oil, all those oils are pretty bad. I started sticking to like coconut oil. I started sticking to grass-fed butter, or sometimes in cases butter, because, you know, grass-fed butter can be expensive. So I tried to go with something that was reasonably whole foods diet, basically. And I think that was the epitome of my research. So if you want whey protein, just to increase your protein count in a day, you can go for it, but, you know, it depends on your stomach. You know, I recommend grass-fed or whey protein from New Zealand, or just isolated protein as well. That's great. That doesn't do too much to your stomach. You know, you won't get the bloating and the farts and all this shit. Yeah, you won't get all that. So another point I want to go on is fixating on high quality food. You want to go for foods that are going to give you the highest amount of like vitamins from it, the highest amount of minerals. I was looking at foods that give you the most benefits. I was looking at foods that can give you just a great overall. Foods with like a highly nutritious profile is the best option that you can go for. And so, like, you know, foods are simple to look for. You know, you can simply go on Google. You can use ChatGPT if you want. You know, you can look at foods with the highest amounts of, you know, vitamin A, highest amounts of vitamin D, foods with highest amounts of vitamin K. You know, you look at foods with the highest amounts of vitamins and minerals. Make sure you get all of them. And then you try to implement those foods into your diet. You know, just having healthy food in general, just, you know, taking care of your health, you know, is indirectly going to increase your test, increase your gains, and increase your muscle that you get in the gym. It's going to increase a lot of things, you know. You're going to feel good. You won't feel like shit. Especially foods, you want to look at foods that like decrease inflammation in your body. Usually processed foods have full of omega-6s, and you want to stay away from the omega-6s. Generally because you want a ratio in your body. You have higher amounts of omega-3s and omega-6. And if you don't balance that ratio, if you don't have enough omega-3 compared to omega-6, you're gonna have high amounts of inflammation in your body, and recovery won't be as good as it should be. Because if you have inflammation in your body, your cells are inflamed, and so they can't take in nutrients because they're inflamed. They can't work properly. You can't lose body fat as much because your cells are inflamed. You know, when they're inflamed, when there's inflammation, you know, there's a lot of bodily functions that don't work and when they're supposed to be working. So it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. You know, you want to go for foods that are as healthy as possible, just to have benefits, you know, overall for how you function daily and for how you function in the gym.